The Senate overwhelmingly rejected it, voting 99-1 to strip it from the bill. Congress tried again through a defense bill. That failed as well. Now they're trying a third time, and if they succeed, states could lose much of their ability to regulate AI. This is the story of the most persistent fight in American AI policy that almost nobody is talking about. In our last video, we covered a growing power struggle, the federal government moving to take control of AI regulation away from individual states. Since then, that story has moved fast. A major new bill just dropped, and it's the third time Congress has tried to make this move in under a year. The first two attempts failed. Here's the full story of why, and whether this one is different. To understand what's happening now, you need to know where this fight started. States didn't wait for Washington. By 2025, state legislatures had introduced well over 1,000 AI-related bills. Colorado adopted one of the nation's first comprehensive AI accountability laws. California passed rules targeting deepfakes and election-related AI content. Texas signed its own AI Governance Act. Other states moved on hiring discrimination and workplace surveillance. That growing patchwork frustrated parts of the tech industry and the Trump administration alike, who argued that companies shouldn't have to comply with 50 different sets of rules. Their solution? Have the federal government step in and establish a single national standard. In legal terms, that's called federal preemption. The idea that federal law overrides state law. And it's exactly what's been at the center of this fight. What followed was a year-long battle that Congress has lost twice and is now trying a third time. The first major push came in the spring of 2025, tucked inside President Trump's signature domestic policy package, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Senator Ted Cruz added an amendment that would have imposed a 10-year moratorium on states enforcing their own AI laws. Not just pausing new legislation, freezing enforcement of laws already on the books. States that didn't comply risked losing federal broadband funding. Many major technology companies and industry groups supported the proposal, arguing that a patchwork of state laws would slow innovation. Critics, including consumer advocates and labor groups, called it, in their words, a handout to big tech at the expense of ordinary Americans. What happened next was remarkable. In an overnight session on July 1st, 2025, the Senate voted 99-1 to strip the provision from the bill. The amendment to remove it was led by Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, a conservative who argued she didn't want the moratorium wiping out state laws protecting recording artists and children from AI-generated abuse material. She was joined by Democrat Maria Cantwell of Washington, and the bipartisan coalition held. Only one senator, Republican Tom Tillis of North Carolina, voted to keep it. The bill passed without the moratorium. Round 1. States win. Do you think states should be able to set their own AI laws, or should there be one national standard? Drop your take in the comments. Congress wasn't done. By November 2025, House Republican leaders were openly discussing the National Defense Authorization Act, the annual must-pass defense bill, as a possible vehicle for renewed AI preemption efforts. A coalition of over 290 state lawmakers wrote to Congress urging them to back off. Faith leaders, labor unions, and whistleblower groups joined in. The backlash was fast and broad. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise ultimately confirmed the language was out, saying the NDAA wasn't the best place for preemption. But he added that Republicans were already looking at other options. When Congress again failed to act, the White House moved on its own. In December 2025, President Trump issued an executive order aimed at discouraging restrictive state AI laws, including tying certain federal broadband funding decisions to state AI policies. But executive orders aren't laws, and legal challenges followed almost immediately. A coalition of state attorneys general pushed back, including officials from both Democratic and Republican-led states. Round 2. States win again, but the question wasn't settled. At this point, you might reasonably ask, if the Senate rejected this 99-1, why are we still talking about it? Supporters of federal preemption argue that the Senate rejected the specific mechanism, a blunt, 10-year moratorium bolted onto unrelated legislation, not the broader idea of a national AI framework. Each failed attempt has refined the approach. The new proposal tries to answer those objections directly, with a shorter timeline, a narrower scope, and a bill that actually stands on its own. Supporters also point out that AI companies don't operate state by state. A model developed in California can be deployed instantly across the entire country, which they argue makes a single national standard more practical than 50 different regulatory systems, all pulling in different directions. Which brings us to June 4th, 2026. Representatives Jay Obernolte, a Republican from California, and Lori Trahan, a Democrat from Massachusetts, released a 269-page discussion draft called the Great American Artificial Intelligence Act of 2026. It's the first attempt to move through a standalone, purpose-built bill rather than piggybacking on something else. The bill has real substance beyond the preemption question. It would require the largest AI companies, defined as those with more than $500 million in annual gross revenue, to publish frameworks for managing catastrophic risk, submit to independent third-party audits, and open their most powerful models for federal review. It creates a Center for AI Standards and Innovation, funds AI workforce development, and addresses cybersecurity and international research cooperation. But the preemption provision is back. This version is narrower than before, a 3-year freeze on state laws governing how AI systems are built, rather than the 10-year blanket moratorium from 2025. States would still be allowed to regulate how AI is used within their borders. Critics argue that distinction is less clean than it sounds. Many protections, they say, depend on regulating how AI systems are designed in the first place, and that separating development from use works better on paper than it would in practice. Supporters argue the narrower scope is a genuine concession and a workable compromise. The bill landed with immediate and fierce opposition from a familiar coalition. Brad Carson, president of Americans for Responsible Innovation and a former Democratic congressman, called preemption a generational mistake, arguing the bill would turn the current floor of state consumer protections into a federal ceiling, locking in today's level of protection and preventing states from responding as the technology evolves. Public Citizen called it, their words, a disastrous proposal that big tech is celebrating. On the other side, supporters argue that AI systems are built in one state and used in all 50, and that protections shouldn't depend on your zip code. The tech industry's main trade group praised the bill for creating national consistency and said, a federal standard is essential for the U.S. to remain competitive globally. The divide isn't cleanly partisan. Democrats co-authored the bill. Some conservatives have opposed preemption on states' rights grounds. Senator Rand Paul argued earlier attempts amounted to federal overreach that undermined state-level experimentation. And the bipartisan opposition that killed the first 2 attempts drew from both sides of the aisle. There are real reasons to think this attempt has a better shot than the previous 2. It's a standalone bill, not an amendment attached to unrelated legislation at the last minute. The discussion draft format signals the authors want feedback before pushing to a formal vote, which suggests they're trying to build a coalition rather than force something through. the scope is meaningfully narrower. 3 years instead of 10. Development only, not deployment. Those are direct responses to the specific objections that brought down the first 2 attempts. And the political moment may be more favorable. On June 2nd, just 2 days before this draft dropped, President Trump signed a separate executive order on AI and cybersecurity, creating voluntary federal review processes for the most advanced AI models. The administration's direction is clear, and there's more momentum behind a federal framework than at any point in the past year. But Congress breaks for recess in August. The feedback window on this discussion draft is short, and the same coalition that defeated the last 2 attempts is already mobilizing again. Congress has tried this 3 times in under a year. Do you think the NDAA finally gets it done? Or does it fail again? Make your prediction in the comments. Over the next several weeks, there are 3 things to watch. First, whether the authors revise the preemption language in response to the feedback period, particularly whether they add carve-outs for areas like child safety or civil rights that sank earlier attempts. Second, whether additional Democrats sign on as co-sponsors. The bill needs broader Democratic support to survive the same bipartisan pushback that killed attempts 1 and 2. And third, whether state attorneys general begin organizing legal opposition before the bill is even formally introduced. That's a signal the fight will move to the courts regardless of what Congress does. 3 attempts, 3 different vehicles, each one stopped by a coalition that crosses party lines. The answer won't just determine who regulates AI. It may determine whether AI policy in America is driven by a single federal framework or by 50 different experiments happening at the state level. If this breakdown was useful, hit the like button. It helps more people find the channel. And subscribe to Synthetic Politics if you want to follow this story as it develops. We'll be back when there's a meaningful update. We'll see you next time.